Imagine this. A bell rings in the city square. Not the bell of celebration. Not the bell of warning. But the bell that announces death. And when it rang, everyone knew who it was for. 1 man. 1 hour. And strangely, he was the calmest person in the city. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you may never look at time the same way again. In the Roman province of Asia lived a man named Cassius Marcellus. Cassius was not poor. But he was not rich either. He lived a respectable life. A merchant of modest success. Known as cautious. Careful. Always preparing for later. Later, he would travel. Later, he would speak honestly. Later, he would live. Later never came. Until the day it all collapsed into 1 hour. Cassius stood accused of conspiring against a local official. The charge was false. But truth mattered little to power. The verdict was swift. The magistrate stood and said, "By order of Rome, you will be executed at sunset." Cassius looked to the window. The sun was already leaning toward the horizon. 1 hour. That was all. Word spread quickly. Some pitied him. Some whispered prayers. Some avoided his eyes, as if death were contagious. A few watched eagerly. But what unsettled them most was Cassius' expression. He did not beg. He did not shout. He did not collapse. He simply nodded. As if he had been expecting this moment all along. You see, Cassius had once studied Stoic philosophy in his youth. Not deeply. Not obsessively. Just enough to hear one sentence that never left him. You may leave life at any moment. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. For years, he treated those words like poetry. Beautiful. But distant. Now, they were instructions. Cassius was permitted to walk freely for his final hour. No chains. No guards. Where will you go? Someone asked. Cassius answered. Nowhere new. He walked the streets he had rushed through all his life. And for the first time, he noticed them. The laughter of children. The smell of bread. The warmth of the sun on his skin. Things he had postponed appreciating. Things he assumed would always be there. Cassius realized something terrifying. He had lived as if time were endless. The Stoics warned against this illusion. They called it forgetting death. Not because death is morbid, but because forgetting it makes life shallow. When death becomes real, life becomes sharp. Cassius stopped at a small home. His sister lived there. For years, they had been distant. Busy. Proud. Silent. He knocked. When she opened the door and saw his face, she knew. Cassius said simply, "I was wrong more often than I admitted." No defense. No excuses. Just truth. Stoicism teaches us that ego dies before the body does, if wisdom arrives in time. As the sun lowered, fear finally came. Not fear of pain. Fear of unfinished life. Dreams delayed. Words unsaid. Courage postponed. Cassius felt the weight of every one day he had ever spoken. The Stoics call this suffering voluntary. Because it is born from delay. Cassius walked to the temple steps. An old Stoic philosopher sat there, as he often did. Cassius said, "I am afraid." The philosopher replied, "Good. Now your fear is honest." Cassius asked, "Have I wasted my life?" The philosopher answered, "No. But you would have, if this hour never came." The philosopher said, "You were always dying, Cassius. You just stopped pretending today." He continued, "Death does not steal life. It reveals it. This is Memento Mori. Not a threat, but a lens. Through it, illusion burns away." As the sun touched the horizon, Cassius walked calmly to the square. The crowd was silent. Cassius looked at them and said, "Do not pity me. Pity the living who forget they are alive." Then he knelt. His face was peaceful, because his mind was no longer elsewhere. The Stoics teach us this. You do not need 1 hour to live fully. You only need to remember that you are mortal. Every delay is a choice. Every excuse is a trade. And time never refunds what you waste. So I ask you now, if you had 1 hour to live, what would you stop worrying about? What would you finally say? What would you finally do? Write it in the comments. And if this story stirred something in you, subscribe to Students of Wisdom. We do not study philosophy to sound wise. We study it to live before it's too late. Remember death. And because of that, remember to live.